Back, my dear students. It is a bit cold. You have seen how I have put on my instrument against coldness. So this time we are going to look at something else. Last time we looked at understanding of history. Now that we have done that, I gave you questions. This time we are diving into the pre-colonial African societies, their divisions according to the writings of the historians. And I am your teacher, Brother Drapari Atandubaifa Isaac, as I told you before. I teach at Iwanda University and also at Iwanda Secondary School. This time we're looking at what we call centralized and decentralized societies in Africa. These societies, most of the times people think before the coming of the colonial powers, African societies were disorganized. In my view, that is a wrong perception. African societies were well organized politically, socially, and economically. Though these European travelers and explorers, missionaries, they did not understand this organization, and they often described the African society organizations as chaotic and disorganized, which to me, as a historian, as somebody who has studied history and an African and have lived, that was not true and is not true. It's not true. So when you diligently study the political, social, and economic institutions of African societies clearly, you will see that there was a high degree of organization and functionality. And this organization made the Europeans now to come up with their own classification of African societies, which we still use today, what they call decentralized and centralized societies. Sometimes they call them segmentary, acephalous, those kind of names that they gave to the African society. So that is what exactly I want us to look at. And I'm beginning with what they call decentralized or stateless or acephalous societies. What are these, or what were these? When you talk of decentralized, acephalous, or stateless societies in terms of Africa, these were societies which generally did not have the hierarchical leadership organization. The examples of such societies include the Iteso, the Karamojong, the Maasai, the Kikuyu, the Chaga, the Yao. These are in East Africa. And then you talk of Igbo in Nigeria, you talk of Tiv of Ghana, and many others. So these societies, power, and authorities were dispensed or distributed among many political players or citizens. So, does that mean that they were disorganized? We shall see. From that, and then we go to what I will call the characteristics or features of these acephalous or stateless societies in Africa. It's important to see these characteristics or features, and then we shall compare them with what you call centralized systems. Leadership in acephalous or stateless societies were not hereditary. That means this power was not handed over to the next generation by the right of birth. No, those who exercised the leadership did so partly on behalf of the society, and it was based on the skills of the individual. So, and these individuals, if you had skills in planning war and undertaking it, you will become the leader of war in that society. So that is what we are calling leadership was never hereditary. So being a chief in such a society did not need you to be a son of a chief. No. So secondly, there was also existence of advisory council of elders. There were elders to advise the people in positions. And when you look at that, does it mean that these societies were really disorganized, were really chaotic? The question is for you and for me to answer. So these councils included the village councils, the assembly of elders, which functioned together and they will make laws and implement them for their community. And another characteristic is what we call the village assembly, which comprised of every member of that village or the society. This is what made the decentralized societies most democratic. So that means everybody participated in the decision making. The village assembly worked in conjunction with the council of elders, which comprised of elderly men and women of wisdom. Most of the time when you will read the historical books, you will find that women were systematically put out of the writings, yet women participated in decision making in pre-colonial African societies. So that's where, as a historian, you have to be very, very careful. Men and women who knew well the history of the society will participate. This council operated as an arbiter rather than the governing body. So theirs was to solve the issues of the society. Another thing is these villages did not have written laws, as you call them, stateless. The laws were not written, but the council of elders together with the village assembly will make these laws and they will follow them. Everybody will follow these laws because laws could be in form of taboos, directives, all of that, and every member would faithfully follow. That was another characteristic of these societies. Another one is there was no specialized and commercialized courts of law like the ones we have today. There were no specialized courts of law, but village assemblies operated as the highest court of appeal. If you had an issue, a burning issue that needed to be settled, you will go to this. In case of a conflict between members of a given society or between clans, the village assembly will sit and discuss openly the proceedings of the case and come up with an agreeable decision and solution. Though this one had some disadvantages, but whatever came out as a judgment from this assembly, they will take it wholeheartedly. That was another characteristic or feature. These societies had no standing army. The decentralized states did not have standing army or what we call professional soldiers, but they did not mean the absence of security. In the absence of a standing army, the matters of security were a collective responsibility of every member of that community. So what you saw wrong, you will report it to the elders. So does that show you that there was some organization, there was some hierarchy? Do you understand it from there? This therefore meant that in times of war, in case of aggressions, every able-bodied man would be called upon to equip himself and defend the community, defend the clan, defend the tribe. So it is this very attitude and patriotism that was exhibited later, even when they started fighting for independence and freedom from the colonial powers. So that one, does it bring something to your mind? then you need to question. Another feature or characteristic is what we call the acquisition of office. So office acquisition was not by right of birth or what, it was on your skills and your capability to protect your community and your efficiency in and effectiveness in undertaking responsibilities that will earn you the office in the stateless societies in Africa. Then there was what we call the clan systems. Most of the African societies had the clan systems, and these clan systems were very important for identification, for belonging, and in fact, the clan system acted as a unity of cohesion, of where people will feel that they belong. Every member belonged to a particular clan in which all the members of that clan claimed a common origin. And that became the even foundation for what you are calling modern states today. So do you see anything there? And then can you try to distinguish between what is true and what is not true as you saw in understanding of history? So the next is what we call the religious beliefs. People of a given society believed in a common religion or similar religion, which was based on the creator God, the ancestral spirits, and others. By the way, in this area, I normally have a lot of laughter when people tell you Africans did not know God, they were worshiping trees, lakes, what. You go to those of you who are Christian, go to your Bible. What was Abraham doing before he was called by God? Was he not worshiping moon and the stars? You go read and you will find that in fact there was a lot of trust levied on Africans because the people who were explaining this, they were not understanding the African setup. So the belief in God, the creator, was there in African society. So the question was, how do we approach this creator God? Just the way the Hebrews did, and they could not pronounce, and it was forbidden to pronounce the name of the creator God, and that's where your Yahweh or Jehovah came about, so that you don't use that name anyhow. You can see historically there is something that was missing in the argument. These religions often played an important role in the maintenance of law and order in the African society before the coming of Europeans. The next is what we call courtship and marriage alliances. Marriage played a great role in pre-colonial African societies. Members of the same clan were not allowed to marry or date one another or each other. So this one was to avoid incest and also inbreeding. I hope you have got that. However, interclan dating and marriages were encouraged for the purposes of improving the interclan relationship, even cementing a relationship with the other societies. It also helped in avoiding conflicts in African societies. So, have you seen something? We also had what we call age groups or age grades. Members of the same age bracket belonged to the same age grade and often were given tasks of that age, unlike today. For example, the youth were charged with activities such as cleaning the marketplaces, the paths, water sources, or cleaning the compounds of homesteads, working in the palaces, caring for livestock, and so forth. And from there, they will learn responsibilities. Look at your youth today. Somebody grows up even does not know how to care for a small chicken. And you say you are in modern society. It is important to note that these age grades were also subdivided on parallel lines based on sex. So girls will be assigned work that is related to their sex as girls, and boys the same, and they will grow up knowing that. And that was to help them to become important people in the society. Then what about the economic and the trade activities? These societies traded with each other or one another, though in a small kind of spheres, but they were doing so. Others engaged in pastoralism, keeping animals, others engaged in crop production, and so forth and so forth. In Uganda, for example, those of you who are Ugandans, you go and read about Masindi district. How the multiplicity, in fact, Masindi, I would refer to Masindi as the Corinth of Uganda in the pre-colonial African societies. Trade was carried out on small doses or small parts, but it was very important. And for example, among the Igbo, there is that which was carried, and they called it arrow chokus, which involved themselves in trade, especially the slave trade, which of course recently Ghana fought against in the UN Council. I hope some of you who are Africans, you applaud Ghana for taking that step to show the world the evil of slave trade in Africa. Then the next is what we call the ownership of natural resources. In pre-colonial African societies, natural resources were communally owned. Things like land, water bodies, forests did not belong to individuals. But to look at today, people wake up and because they are connected to big people, they destroy a forest, they destroy water source. Then you wonder whether they belong to African societies. But these things in African societies were owned communally, and it is a characteristic of pre-colonial African societies, what we call decentralized societies. So, and then what about the aspect of peace? These African societies, now let me bring it from both from centralized and decentralized societies. Peace was central to these societies. They will make sure these societies promoted peace. For if I can take you back to marriages, marriages were even used as a means to bring peace in these societies. Warring clans, the elders will come together and promote interclan marriage as a way of doing away with the conflict, and it worked. So, can you say that the African societies were not organized? And then it is a serious issue. I want us now to finally look at the summary of the characteristics of these self-reliant societies, what you call decentralized African societies. Politically, there was no centralized leadership. Leadership was never hereditary. There was the existence of advisory councils. There was no standing army. Office acquisition was on skills and capabilities. The clan was the basic political, economic, and social unit. And then it was democratic because all when people will come, they will discuss openly. Unlike yours, today people go in parliament, they are discussing their own things, not even where they come from. So they should go back and they learn from this decentralized African societies. Hopefully, they are reading history. Socially, these decentralized societies also believe in religion. They had their religious systems. They had their norms, customs, and traditions. They promoted inter-clan marriages. There was existence of age groups. Respect for elders was promoted. Initiation ceremonies were there. Sex education, as I told you, these age groups also promoted sex education. Use of common language. Economically, they did the trade. They undertook crop production, animal rearing, communal ownership of resources, and then the other activities like pottery, mining, raiding, fishing, they also undertook these activities. So I hope with that you have understood something about settlers, segmentary or decentralized societies in the pre-colonial Africa. Therefore, I want to give you some questions that will make you to read more for yourself, then find more. I always encourage you that after my presentation to you, you go and read whether what I'm saying you agree with it or not, but by reading you will be empowering yourself with more knowledge, and you will be able to see the truth and falsehood in the history books you are reading, and therefore you will be able to become a very important historian who will help society, African societies, to understand things the way they are. So the first question is, what are selfless societies? Two, discuss the critical features of segmentary societies in Africa. Three, the decentralized societies were not really decentralized as portrayed by historical writers. Discuss. I repeat that question. The decentralized societies were not really decentralized as portrayed by historical writers. Discuss. Number four, examine the political, social, and economic organization of any two selfless societies in East, Central, West, and North Africa. I also repeat that question. Examine the political, social, and economic organization of any two selfless societies in East, Central, West, and North Africa. Number five, what are the similarities and the contrasts between centralized and the decentralized societies in the pre-colonial Africa? Number six, colonialism disrupted the organic development of the political, economic, and social systems of African societies. How valid is this statement? I repeat, colonialism disrupted the organic development of the political, economic, and social systems of African societies. How valid is this statement? Thank you for listening to me. I wish you well in your further research. We meet again next time. Thank you.